All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Matt Feltenstein, and it is my esteemed privilege to announce Jason Rogers, who's going to be giving you a talk about looking at different kind of systems for analyzing gait in animals, treadmill versus non-treadmill systems. To kind of give you a little bit of background about Jason. Jason's a native of Indiana. He got his bachelor's degree at Indiana State University, Sycamores, go fighting trees. And then he went to the University of Utah, where he got his PhD with Dr. Ray Kesner in the Department of Psychology. His dissertation work primarily focused on the neurobiology of learning and memory, specifically functional behavior differences between the hippocampus and parietal cortex. In 2005, Jason joined Dr. Ron C's laboratory as a postdoc fellow at the Medical University of South Carolina. That's where Jason and I met. I had started a year earlier, and he focused on translational models of drug relapse. In 2008, Jason joined Noldus as a product specialist and trainer. And since then, he's had many roles at Noldus, from account manager to lead consultant and now senior research scientist. He has traveled extensively throughout the world, giving many training courses, seminars, and speaking conferences, again, all over the world. Again, he knows everything Noldus. Again, as everything else in life, I follow Jason. So again, he joined in 2008, I joined in 2012. And again, we've been postdocs and now work partners at Noldus, which is getting a very good fit for both of us. So again, you're in for a treat today. And again, with that, Jason, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah,
a couple of other things, just so because everyone knows this is being recorded. If you have any questions, just put them into the chat, because if I remember correctly, everyone's microphones are muted right now. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, there's a question and answer. There's also a chat, so feel free to let us know. And you can either save your questions for the end, or we can go, you can just add them when you have them, and we'll go ahead and answer them on the fly. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And hopefully, Matt, you can see that.
Yes, I can.
Great. Okay, I'm just going to make sure I get everything opened up over here. So I'm going to be doing some dual monitors and all that fun, exciting stuff. I'm checking some questions. Okay, great. So again, appreciate everybody coming. And if you're watching this after the fact, appreciate you joining. The goal today is to really talk about free walking versus treadmill, basically unmotivated versus motivated gait analysis. So the overview for today, we're going to talk a little bit about why to measure a rodent's gait, why does it matter? And then we're going to talk about some free walking systems and some treadmill systems and the pros and cons of each. We've got about 5 systems to go over. Not an exhaustive list by any means, but more just for the sake of time and for commercial applications. I don't talk about any open source ones, mostly focusing on what's, like I said, commercially available, but also what's in the literature. And then we'll talk a little bit about some publications, some user testimonials, and then I'm happy to answer any questions and we can chat a little bit further. So I want to start with my Ray Kesner take-home message. That basically there are 3 take-home messages here, is that there are many ways and many reasons to measure a rodent's gait. Of course, you all know that. That's why you're here. When in doubt, unforced free walking is preferred because it more mimics a natural locomotion of the animal. However, if that's not possible, if that's just not something that can be done, then you can go with a treadmill system, because they do offer some value. And I want to present to you a little bit of a cheeky example. So this is the holy mountain of Haleakala on the island of Maui in Hawaii. This right here, you can see this right here is my significant other. So the mountain is quite huge. And no one would argue that if you have the opportunity, you should go. You should go to Maui. And if you have the opportunity to walk on Haleakala, you should do so. It's fantastic. It's at 10,000 feet. It is an amazing, amazing thing. You think you're walking on the surface of Mars. And so a chance to be out in a natural walking environment is always preferred. But that's not always possible, right? So you can't always go to Maui. Well, so if you can't go to Maui, well, treadmill also suffices and also can work. And so this is an example of a treadmill, which is actually about 3 meters that way, of my treadmill in the basement. This is the Haleakala series that I just completed, walking on the Nordic track. And so again, free walking, always preferred. If you have the opportunity to go to Maui, do so. But if you can't, well, then the Nordic track can still get you some exercise and you can still have the experience. Okay, so let's start at the beginning of why we even measure a rodent's gait. Well, there are a lot of things that can affect the way a rodent walks, right? And all of these can really give you some really interesting behavioral outcomes. So for example, you can have changes to the central nervous system due to neurotrauma or neurodegenerative diseases, TBI, spinal cord, Huntington's, Parkinson's, ALS, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You can also have changes to the peripheral, oops, actually those are out of order. So I'll just go ahead and throw them up. So you can have peripheral nerve damage, you can have neuromuscular changes, MS, myasthenia gravis, Guillain-Barré, sciatica, pain. In fact, we have a lot of users of catwalk who specifically looking at pain models. You can also have skeletal changes, arthritis, osteoporosis, etc. And then finally, all of these factors can be affected by age, genetic variations, mechanical things like damages or what have you, chemical changes, neuropharmacological changes, et cetera, et cetera. So of course, you all know this, and you all know that there are a lot of applications, but I start with this because every system that we're going to talk about today, with the exception of the most classic standard manual way, but every automated system that we're going to talk about, whether it's unmotivated or forced motivation, whether it's free walking or treadmill, all provide you a lot of data, between 25 and 50 plus parameters. And the reason why is because there are so many different applications and so many different parameters for each one. And so if you have a pain model, you might be looking at a different aspect of the animal's gait than if you have, say, a TBI model, or if you're looking at arthritis over the lifespan of a mouse. So we start with a broad application because there are a lot of parameters. There are a lot of things to the way the animal walks, and that's what we're going to get into. So let's start with the free walking system, the unmotivated. Well, I say unmotivated in the sense that we're not forcing the animal to walk, right? It's a natural motivation. And the basics of them are this, and this image here was taken from this publication, and I just thought it was really interesting, kind of cute. So basically the idea is that you have some sort of walkway and the animal freely walks from one side to the other, and then there's some measurement there involved. So we're going to go through three systems here. Obviously, we're going to start with catwalk because, well, the obvious. Then we're going to talk a little bit about runway scan, and then just the old classic for those unfortunate to still be doing the ink and paper. So in terms of the two automated systems, they all kind of have the basic premise. So we're going to start with this. So here we have a walkway. This walkway here is got, it's a glass plate with some green LEDs running through it. This is our actual corridor. I'll show you a side view in a second. This is an illuminated ceiling with red LEDs to illuminate the outline and shape of the animal. There is a goal box here, which provides a nice ecologically valid reinforcer. It gives the animal a chance to escape something that they want to go into. Another option is you could put a piece of food, make it an appetitive task, and so that way the animals are running to get some food. You've got a camera underneath here recording at 100 frames per second. The system is on wheels and it's got a nice base and you can walk it all around. And then if we turn it slightly so you can see the corridor, so here's the corridor that you can move for the animal. Of course, it's all adjustable. So whether you're doing rats, mice, macaques, marmosets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So starting with catwalk, among the many pros that come from the catwalk system, first and foremost, you're going to see high-speed camera, and you're going to see that pretty much across the board when we're talking about these gait analyses. It is an unforced, free-walking, natural movement of the animal. Because of that illuminated ceiling here, because of this red illumination, the animal color, the animal strain does not have any influence on the paw detection. So whether you're doing a 500-gram rat, if you ever have the unfortunate of that, or if you're doing a 350-gram rat, or you're doing a 35-gram mouse, what have you, the animal color, the animal strain doesn't matter. Whether you have a white agouti or a C57 or a black 6 or what have you, if you have a long Evans, Sprague Dolly, doesn't matter. Catwalk provides a ton of gait parameters, over 50. We'll go through some of those. In addition, you also have automatic detection, automatic classification, and automatic analysis of all of the footprints. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And I'll show you some of the cool 3D images that you can see. And then lastly, which is sort of more on the OSHA side and just sort of mechanically for you as researchers, is the system. This here, the illuminated ceiling is on a hinge, so it'll open up. The walkway itself is also on hinges with spring loaded, so then you can clean the walkway, clean the glass, super easy to clean. So of course, there are a few cons to using a free walking system, and we'll kind of get into a little bit of that, which is going to be funny because I think you're going to see this consistently throughout. So one of the cons that are often brought up and mentioned is, well, what if my animals can't walk? What if my animals just don't want to walk? And that's a fair point. If you have say a complete spinal cord injury and the animals are incapable of walking, well, then yeah, you're not going to be able to analyze an animal's gait if the animal can't walk. Now, on the other side, if the animal actually does drag the paw, right? They don't actually put the paw down and they just drag it. You're going to get complete data for that. You're still going to get dragging data out of that. And then you're also going to get data for the other 3 compensatory paws as well. Something that also has been brought up a lot, not only from some of the interviews I've done, but also some from publications. People will say, well, you know, one of the things about catwalk or other free walking systems is you have to normalize on speed. And so some of the advantages of other systems are they provide a constant speed. But I'm going to argue against that. And you're going to see why when we get into it. But one of the things that I've seen in other publications is others have reported that an animal walking at 50 centimeters per second is equivalent to an animal walking at 100 centimeters per second. And so, yes, the parameters are speed dependent, but does that matter? And is speed something that was just hung upon to say, well, that's an easy thing, low-hanging fruit to complain about? Because the other side of that, and one of the most underrated features of catwalk, is you have the ability to say, I want to maintain consistent speed variability throughout the run. So the animal has to maintain a consistent speed as it runs. And it can't go slow and then speed up and then slow and then speed up. It has to be consistent throughout each run. So then you have the data for each run going consistently, and each footfall pattern within that is then comparable. We'll talk more about this throughout, but I just kind of want to bring this idea up to you because this is probably the most #1 thing that I have heard is, well, free walking, yeah, but what about speed? Okay, well, okay. I think there was a question, so if you want to go ahead and ask your question, go ahead, but put it in the chat, and we'll get there as we go throughout. So as I mentioned, catwalk works by having an illuminated glass walkway. So the illumination comes from green LEDs that are going through, and as the animal walks, it reflects the light down to the camera. And so what you actually see is intensity of light. The more pressure, the harder they press, the more intensity of light is reflected. This is on grayscale value of 0 to 255 arbitrary units. So what we are actually seeing is intensity from the actual paws. The black outline is from that red illuminated ceiling, so that as the animal is walking, it's causing a shadow. The green is then the footprints that you can see. And so everything is being measured then in intensity of the paws, and then all the calculations are being done from that. So the detection of the footprints is not based on some algorithmic measure, but rather from the actual illumination of the animal's footprints. Now, I should also note that what you see here walking is a rat. So if you have a 350-gram rat, or if you have a 15-gram mouse, obviously order of magnitude difference in terms of weight, you can actually calibrate the system and normalize the system to intensity of light. And so the system will automatically bring up the light of the LED or the intensity of the red walkway to ensure that your mouse also has the same illumination as, say, a rat. And that's all built in to this system. Okay. Oops, wrong direction. So once you have your footprints, once you have some light illumination, then the software automatically detects the blobs. And that's what we're going to start off calling them. If any of you have ethovision, you're all familiar with the blobs. The blobs are then assigned value based on the automatic footprint classification. So there's an algorithm built in that will automatically find the paws. Okay, so there's illumination there. Great. Now let's assign a value to that: right front, right hind, left front, left hind. And this is done for every frame, so 100 frames per second. And then from there, all of the data are then calculated. And you can see here, even within the footprints, you're getting illumination information. So the brighter it is, the more pressure there is, the more illumination. Now, one quick thing to note is that Catwalk doesn't actually work on Newtonian pressure, so you don't get any pounds per pressure or anything like that. It is intensity of light. However, Frank Hammers, who developed this in the early 90s, early to mid 90s, has some published data showing from some of the very, very, very early catwalks that using illumination and using illuminated footprints matches and maps on very well to Newtonian pressure. And so using intensity of light is a valid measure and maps on to how heavy an animal is walking. If you'd like, I'm happy to share a lot of those early validation studies. So once we have footprints, once we have them classified, then the fun part really begins. And so what's really nice about Catwalk is you get relational footprints and you also get temporal footprints. And I'll show you that in a second. So relational is, for example, the stride length, the base of support. So if an animal's walking like this, or if they're walking like this, so you can really look at how the animals are walking. What is their particular stride length? What are the print positions themselves? What type of walk is there? You also get temporal information. And again, this is just kind of a taste of the information. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you really get cadence. You get the exact type of step sequence it was. You get inner limb coordination from phase dispersions, couplings, phase lags. You can look at whether the animal's on 1, 2, 3, or 4 paws, the lateral, the girdle, the diagonal, etc. You get standing, you get swing, maximum contact. You also get stand index, which is how fast and how quickly the animals are pulling their paws off the walkway. So you get a lot of data. And in fact, a lot of these measures you're going to get throughout the systems, and you're going to see a lot of these. But the really fun thing about Catwalk, I say fun thing, but to me is really the data visualizations and being able to see what the animals are doing. So yes, getting the quantitative numbers out of it is absolutely necessary. Of course, you're researchers, you've got to do your publishing, of course. But really visualizing and bringing the data to life is really the fun part. And I'm going to make a shameless plug here for my next webinar, which I don't even remember when that is, but stay tuned. But it's all going to be on data visualization and how to use the data within Catwalk and the data visualizations to tell a story. So stay tuned for that. So Catwalk gives you both 2D and 3D visualizations, which are absolutely fantastic. So here we can see an animal walking. So here we see front, 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 hind, hind. And this is an alternate pattern. And then the animal switched to a cruciate pattern. You can see these not part of a pattern. This is. And then you can also see the timing view. It kind of reminds me of some 1980s Atari stuff, but you can really see the length of the time on it. This is the stand phase. This is the swing phase. You can see exactly where they are. And then what I think is the absolute coolest is then you can take this and turn this into a 3D model. And so this, of course, is all built into the system, where here we've got the stride length, we've got the stride or the print width, the print length, excuse me. And then here is on our Z axis is 0 to 255. This is our actual intensity. And so you can see exactly how the animals are putting their footprints, how they're rolling through. You can see this in a 2D way. You can see that in a 3D way. You can slow it down so you can really see exactly how your animal is walking. So here you can see it in real speed, or you can even slow it down to where it's really nice. And again, all of this is self-generated, right? So we're not challenging the animal to walk. We're not giving it a belt speed. We're letting the animal propel itself. Okay, great. In addition to all of that, as I said, you're going to get a lot of parameters. And what you're doing is telling a story with these parameters. No one is ever going to publish data with just one catwalk measure. And in fact, even at the very, very minimum, you see here, for example, in a TBI model, they have 3 parameters, right? Others using a lot more. So this is a publication from 2007 showing a review of all of the different parameters used within catwalk. So print size, stand duration, swing duration, base of support, all et cetera, et cetera. And you can see that list continues on here. So there's a lot of data generated within the system. There's a lot of ways to analyze the data, but the main take-home message is the animal walks, it's illuminated, the software automatically detects that, and away you go, and it's fantastic. Now, an alternative to that is you do have another system called the runway scan, and it also uses a high-speed camera. It also uses unforced free walking, natural movement, also gives you a lot of gait parameters as far as I could tell. Some things about this particular system is there's not a lot of information publicly available. And in fact, there are very few citations, as you'll see. In fact, I'll just go ahead and mention it now. Over the last 4 years, there have only been 2 publications using this system. So there's not a lot of information and data out there. We're going to talk more about this, but you're going to see they also make something called tread scan. What is the difference, right? So you don't get a lot of public information. There are no visualizations within software, and there aren't a lot of citations. However, and when I say no visualizations, not like the 3D visualizations within Catwalk, but here you do get the same print length, the toe spread, the gait angle, the stride frequency, the stride length, etc. So you do get a fair amount of data. Oh, I guess I should change the slide first. Okay. Of course, just because I was talking about it with one of our users over the weekend, the most standard and the most classic way to go about it is ink and paper, right? So it's super simple, super cheap. Just get a piece of paper, some India ink, ink up the paws, let the animals run. And you can see some examples here. This is from the late 90s. So this is before we had any automated systems. But of course, it's messy. You've got a bunch of ink and animals with ink on their paws. But the main thing is everything is manual. You've got to classify the paws manually. You've got to analyze everything manually. So as you can imagine, this is exceptionally time consuming. And making sense of this data can often be a challenge. This is literally the reason why automated systems have come about. Okay. So moving from the free walking systems to the forced walking systems, we're going to talk a little bit about treadmills. So for you Jamiroquai fans, we're going to talk a little bit about traveling without moving, running on a treadmill. And from that same publication I showed you earlier, the idea is you have a treadmill track and you've got some sort of passive walk because the the animal has to run and keep up within the chamber. And so we're going to talk about two systems here, DigiGait and TreadScan. Again, there are others, but for the sake of time and ease, we're just going to focus on these. The basics of a treadmill system are this. You have a top light to, let's see, come on, whoops, excuse me. There we go. So you have a top light to illuminate the animal here. You've got a nice, clear, transparent treadmill belt made of specialized material so the animal can walk without slipping. You've got your high-speed camera built into it here, of course, underneath to see, and you can adjust the speed. Right? And the main thing is that unlike, say, an appetitive-based task or a motivated, natural reinforced-based task, this is an animal forcing you to walk via a treadmill system. Right? Make sure my slides are moving with me. Okay, there we go. Okay, oh, sorry. Okay, great. So the first system is DigiGait. You can see an example here. This is a picture taken from their website. Really brilliant picture of a white mouse running. So you can see here the roller bars moving, the animal's running on a treadmill, and there's a camera underneath to analyze everything. So it uses a high-speed camera. It uses controlled, adjustable speed. So you can set the treadmill to run at, say, 30 centimeters per second, and then look at how the animal's moving. One of the things that I think is really nice about the DigiGait system is you can actually adjust the horizontal plane, meaning you can adjust it and challenge it with an uphill or a downhill walk. And then you get a lot of parameters out of that, just like all the other systems. Now, I have to confess, I've never actually used any of this system. So these are all from things that I have read or from interviews that we have done. So first and foremost is that there's an algorithm to determine all the parameters. So we're not actually measuring the animal's footprints. This is all based on some algorithmic analysis and assumptions being made about how the animals are walking. Something else that's interesting is that different colored animals can produce different results. In fact, I came across a protocol for the behavioral core at Texas A&M, where if you've got white or agouti mice, excuse me, that they actually require some sort of paw marking. So you have to ink the paws, much like you do on an ink and paper system. You have to mark the animal's paws in order for the paws to be seen by the system. Much like every treadmill system, whether it's your one from the gym or your one here at home or whatnot, it does require some periodic calibration, tighten the belt, make sure it's running at the appropriate speed. Something that the interviews that I conducted came out is that there's a lot of intense post-processing to make sense of the data. And then lastly, there's the bright light that's generated can be anxiogenic to the animal. So it can be a stressor to the animal. Now I want you to indulge me because I want to return to this idea of speed for a second. And I want you to look at this animal. First of all, this animal is adorable and I've been watching this for just hours, just staring at it. But this is taken from YouTube. So this is a YouTube video from DigiGait Systems directly. So we see our animal walking. And then you see him slow down, and you see him speed up, and then you see him stop moving, and then continue on. And so what you don't have is a consistent gait throughout all of this. What you have is a series of gait-like episodes, right? You're still getting contact with the walkway. You're still getting stand and swing and all of that. But now you're introducing variation and variability. And so I assume that we're looking at a wild type mouse here, control mouse, but I don't know. I don't know what that looks like in a normal mouse. You can see him stopping, puts his hind limbs down a little bit. And so, yes, okay, you can control the speed of the treadmill, but the animals still aren't walking at a consistent speed. And I think that even though one of the complaints about a free walking system is speed, I think you also need to take that into consideration when looking at a treadmill system. You have to look at the consistency of the animal's runs. Now, that said, you do get a lot of parameters out of DigiGait, which are really nice, some fantastic. You get some functional indices, you get the propel and the brake time, of course, based on the fact that they're slowing down, speeding up, slowing down, speeding up. But all these, it's very similar: swing, stance, stride length, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Another treadmill option is the tread scan by Clever Systems. It also uses a high-speed camera and also gives you a ton of gait parameters. Now, I have not come across anyone using tread scan, gait scan, runway scan, or any of the other scans that they offer. And so this is all based on information that I found publicly available. So if there's anyone watching, or if there are users who have experience with this, contact me, please. I'd love to hear about your experience. I'd love to talk more about this. I'd actually just love to learn what's the difference between, obviously, tread scan is a treadmill and runway scan is not, but is that the only difference? And which one do you actually need? It seems that they're just making a ton of products, but the choice is overwhelming. And what is the difference? And which is better and which is worse, when it just seems that they're making things to make things? That seems to be what I could find. Something else that I found, and again, this is from 10 years ago, so take it with, 9, 10 years ago. So take it with a grain of salt, and I don't want to harp on things for previous, but in previous data, researchers have found that the testing time is experience dependent. That means there's a strong learning curve. So the more experience you have with the system, the easier it is to run animals, right? Unlike, say, a catwalk where you just turn the system on, put the animals on, and they run across, and you analyze some footprints. This actually requires a little bit of learning time. As with all treadmills, it can be difficult to maintain and keep clean. As you can imagine, animals urinating and defecating on the belt could cause some trouble there. It is not portable. It has some difficult analyses according to this publication in terms of creating the foot models. There are some accessory files that are required for analysis. And something that was reported is that the data were not really reproducible within their animal model. Again, this is not my experience because I don't have any experience. This is just information that I found. You do get some really nice visualizations, right? I do love pretty pictures, particularly of the footprints and the paws, but you do get all of the data parameters: stride length, paw pressure, spacing, running speed, and all of that. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the publications and who's using it and who's publishing where, and give you some user testimonials. We're doing great on time, so usually I'm running behind, so this is fantastic. So what you're seeing here are the number of publications for the last 5-6 years, right? On the left side, on the left graph here, we've got the number of publications for Nature, Neuron, Journal of Neuroscience, and Science, the top 4 neuroscience journals in the literature now in terms of impact factor. What we have here on our right side is the just the number of Google Scholar mentions, right? So just the overall number of publications, not including citations. Not including citations. So if a paper cites Catwalk, it doesn't include it. This is just all Catwalk direct users, DigiGait users, and TreadScan. And as I mentioned, I did not include the runway scan because there are only a couple of publications that I could find over the last couple of years. But as you can see, there are about twice as many overall Google Scholar mentions for DigiGait as there is TreadScan, and there are about twice as many Catwalk publications as there are DigiGait. So I don't want to make this seem like I'm just going to come out and bash everything. So if it does come across that way, that's my apologies. My approach was really to try to take the most objective approach possible within reason, right? So I did manage to interview a couple of behavioral course This was part of another project that I did on how to design a behavioral core, another shameless plug for that project. But we do have a couple of EtherVision users who use DigiGate, and they're quite happy with it. So I asked them, what do you like about it? I'm not looking for negatives. I really want to know what attracted you to it. So the behavioral core at the University of Ottawa said they're quite happy with it. In fact, in their experience, they found it difficult to motivate big rats with hip implants or mice in the later stages of Rett syndrome without using a treadmill. So the forced gait is necessary in their hands. And that's okay, that's perfectly fine and happy and great. Another report from the University of Minnesota said that, yeah, the data cleanup is really time consuming and rather intense, but you do get a lot of data, get quite a bit of good data out of the system, which is nice. There is a publication from a couple of years ago that directly compared Catwalk to DigiGate. And what they found is that DigiGate has an advantage and its fixed speed, its dynamic sciatic functional imaging index, the sciatic functional index calculated by the 2D images, while Catwalk excels at its intrinsic velocity, meaning the animal's velocity, the intensity data, meaning the footprint data, and then also those high quality 3D images. And then of course that publication from about 10 years ago compared DigiGate and TreadScan and found that in their model of acute inflammatory monoarthritis, that they actually couldn't really see any changes in the gait system, and that neither gait system were all that effective in their animal model. So my take-home message is that one, that the choice of methodology in the system really depends on your experimental parameters. I can send you publications that will show you how to normalize speed and how to compare speed in Catwalk, okay? I can also share with you publications on how to make your DigiGate data more like Catwalk data and how to actually transform your data to fit more like intensity data from Catwalk. So there are pluses and minuses to that, right? And everything that I read and everything that I have studied says that no matter who says what about what system, every single system, whether it's treadmill or free walking, every system requires habituation and pre-training. And anyone who tells you otherwise is just straight up lying. You need to pre-train your animals. But anyone who's done any behavioral studies knows that's always the case. My first week of grad school, right out of the gate, go runway train your animals so that when they get on the maze, they know that there's a point to what they're doing, right? So every system requires some habituation, some pre-training for optimal use. So the last point I want to make, and this is sort of a very passive-aggressive way to go about this, but conversations that are had about systems should be about what is best for you as the researcher. It should not be about which company sucks, which company is better or worse. It should be about what system is best for you, your science, your question, your space, and your availability. There's no room, there's enough negativity in the world right now. There's no room for one company to go out and bash another company. That's just not necessary. So whether you do that in a live sales demo and whether you do everything you can to make our company look bad, that's not what our science needs. We need open conversations about these types of methodologies, about these types of systems, so that we can best serve the research and we can all get better at providing what is ultimately important, which is providing quality images, quality data to reduce the harm to the animals, reduce the number of animals necessary, and provide the best quality data imaginable. So with that, I would like to say thank you. I see there are a couple of questions in the Q&A, so open it up for some discussion. I would like to say that this talk was largely influenced and motivated by my two puppies, Winston and Albus Doodledore. This picture right here was actually taken on Friday of last week. We got a few centimeters of snow, And of course, always walking the animals, I'm always fascinated by staring at the footprints, particularly the little one, little Albus, who likes to walk, and his direct register. And so that really has got me thinking about gait analysis and really motivated me to start working on the catwalk. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, jason@noldus.com. We're here, we're available. If you have experience with any of these systems, good or bad, preferably good, I'd love to hear it. I want to hear about these experiences. We want to hear what works for you and what models you're using for, and how we can get better, and how we can help everyone get better with their work. So on that note, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see the Q&A and see everything, and welcome Matt back. So we're at 11:40, 40 minutes, fantastic. So I don't think we'll use the whole hour, but really appreciate everyone coming. So let's see what kind of questions we have, Matt.
Yeah. So I've answered
them all. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I answered them, but I'm going to let some of them I can't really comment on. So we've been asked this question before by a number of people, and I'm not aware, but maybe you know something I don't know. Is there any system in the market that does movement analysis based on trajectories of joint positions and angles with respective properties?
Joints and angle motions, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's one of the ideas behind Deep Lab Cut and using AI and these machine learning algorithms. I know it takes a severe amount of training data and a fair amount of programming experience, which it's speaking Swahili to me, so I don't really even know. But I think that was the idea behind it. Now, in an automated way, no, because the traditional way of doing that was the BBB score and looking at the individual joints, the individual motions. That of course requires observers and people watching and analyzing.
Okay, perfect. The other one is, and I answered this, but again, I may be wrong. I was like, can we comment about how comparable data from Catwalk is compared to Digigate? A user changed institutions where they had Digigate, but now the new institution is Catwalk. Wonder if I could use Catwalk data to boost my sample size, analyze with Digigate. My gut reaction was it's kind of apples and oranges, because we are looking at the treadmill system versus non-treadmill system. But again, maybe I'm completely wrong there.
No, not necessarily. So it's a little bit of it is apples to oranges, but you're at least still in the fruits, right?
Right.
And there are some publications I'm happy to share with you that compare the two systems and show you how to use the Digigate data to look more like Catwalk. But again, even in the human world, there's plenty of data to show that running on a treadmill doesn't match running outside, that there are changes to the gaits. And so the overall assumptions and the overall way they work and the applicability of them don't necessarily match.
Yes.
The answer is somewhere in a yes and no, maybe, depending on the research question, exactly what you're getting out of.
Right. And I can just give an anecdotal explanation about how it changes. Going to the airport, of course, looking at my phone, walking, get to the moving sidewalk, moving walkway, and I step on it and immediately almost fell over because it was not moving, and I expected it to be moving, so I changed my gait accordingly. Yeah, it completely, like, I got on there, almost fell over because I was expecting it to be moving and it wasn't. So again, I completely, within like half a second, I completely changed my stride, completely changed my gait based on what I was expecting to happen. It didn't happen, and I almost fell face first on the non-moving walkway. So yeah.
Now, just looking at the questions from earlier, and I know you answered it, Matt, but in terms of the amount of data, I would encourage you to come to our my next webinar on data storytelling and really focusing on some of the different parameters and some of the different animal models. There are factors that are more and less relevant, but it depends on the research question, right? A TBI model is going to be very different than a pain model, which is going to be different than an arthritic model. And so how we characterize and describe that is one of the fun things about Catwalk that I absolutely love. There's no one parameter. It's a series of them that you're using to tell a really beautiful story.
And so we'll just ask, when is that webinar again?
Oh, I don't know when it is yet. And I'm sorry, Sabine, I should know this information, but I don't remember exactly when that's going to be. So check back on the website, make sure to check so you can see when our webinars are coming in. Cool.
Any other questions or
Look at that.
comments? Well done, Jason.
Well, I appreciate everybody coming. I do appreciate all the attendees. Thank you for the questions. It's always difficult to do these kinds of webinars because I would much prefer some sort of interaction with all of you instead of me just staring at my camera and my computer, which I do every day anyway. I'd much rather see all of your smiling faces and be able to have a conversation about this. But one day we'll get there and we can go back to that world. But in the meantime, thank you so much for coming. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to contact us, jason@noldus.com. I'm happy to pass you on to anyone who's relevant, no matter where you are. So if you're in China or in Germany or whatever, I'll pass you on to my colleagues and we'll get you where you need to go. If you want to check out the system, I'm sure there are things that we can do to help with that, et cetera, et cetera. So thanks again for coming. Again, this webinar is recorded. The link to the recording will be shared, so feel free to pass that along. And with that, I'm actually going to stop the recording and can kind of wait any few more minutes.